Hi, this is Richard Barrett for Guitarist magazine, welcoming you to another Blues Headlines. What you're about to hear is me playing 5 licks based off the CAGED chord shapes. We've stuck them together into a continuous solo, and I'll be back afterwards to talk you through. So as you can hear, there's a certain Clapton influence to that solo. This, I must say though, is not specifically a Clapton style file or anything like that. It's just that the backing track I put together reminded me of latter day Clapton, and so I've gone for that kind of tone with the middle pickup of the Strat. Now, the licks themselves, there's a little bit of pentatonic in them, but the point of this really is to show you what other options you have based on the 5 common chord shapes, C, A, G, E and D. Couldn't remember them then. Well done me. So I haven't done them in order, but I've come up with some licks which are based around that framework, because I feel that quite a lot of the time when people talk about CAGED, they'll give you the 5 shapes but no vocabulary. What I'm trying to do is bridge that gap and actually give you things that you can play rather than just the plain chord shape. So with that said, let's move on to lick 1. So for this first example, I'm playing in this box here between the 9th and the 12th frets. There are a couple of ways that we can look at this. One is that it would be the E major pentatonic. But if we come back towards the whole CAGED principle, specifically the G chord, now what I'm going to do here is try and fret the G chord that would live here to give us an E. So this first finger is a temporary capo. I'm not recommending this chord to people. It's way too uncomfortable. I mean, I'm sat down and I'm hunched, but it's a matter of knowing that that shape is there without necessarily having your fingers on it. Now, as you might play a G chord down here, and you might go, but I'm holding the chord at the end of that. Now here, I'm going to play basically the same thing. Again, I emphasize, I'm not recommending anyone play that chord as part of a solo. It's just way too uncomfortable and impractical. But the thinking behind it is we're using one of the CAGED chord shapes there. It does mingle a bit with the pentatonic, but my emphasis really is on the chord shapes. I've tried to make it as musical as possible. Anyway, with that in mind, let's go on to lick 2. So for this second lick, I've used what we would call the D shape, but it's in the key of A. So D, we obviously know is down there. If I take it up to here, or even perhaps, again, it's not a chord that I'm saying, yeah, we should all start playing this all the time, because it's a bit uncomfortable, but it is a useful shape to internalize. Maybe put your hands on it a few times and you get to know where the notes are. Now, I've been a little bit more mysterious about the way that I've used this one. I've started with, and in the way that I might mess around with the D chord and add sus4s and I've taken that out of the open position. It's not particularly bluesy, when played in that way, though it does remind me of some of the things that Eric Johnson might come up with, who was a big Clapton fan as well. So this could be a way of adding some interest rather than always relying on the same pentatonic licks, though it is. So we're not a million miles from the pentatonic, we're in the same territory. This is all about how you look at the notes you're playing rather than necessarily playing lots of different notes. Right, let's move on to lick 3. On this third example, we've got the backing track going from B major to C major down to B major, so that's an interesting little semitone move there, and I've followed that with a caged chord shape. This time I've gone for the C shape, which you will have seen before down here. Now maybe you could imagine a scenario where you'd play maybe acoustic guitar and go that kind of lick, but rather than playing it as an open position chord, I'm playing it as an arpeggio type shape up here. So I've started with the B major. Now I'm going to try bravely to play the whole chord shape just to give you the illustration. Again, not recommending this as a shape for us all to go and play at the next blues jam because it's really uncomfortable, but it's just a point of reference. There's the shape. And I should add, by way of over information, that you can also see that there's a D chord hidden away in there. But perhaps we should save that kind of talk for later. So, and then for the C. So again, we could link this to a... pentatonic is never far away. It's just that I'm looking to demonstrate the chord shapes rather than the pentatonic. In the licks themselves, I've gone for a couple of little extra grace notes and bends and things like that to make it a more musical context. Because as I say, I want to do vocabulary rather than here are the shapes, now go and make up solos with them. That doesn't really help anyone. Anyway, time to move on to lick 4. In this fourth example, I'm using the E major shape and the notes around it. So if I were to play a bar chord up here, I'm just trying to hide the kind of stratitis. Even with the EMGs, you get a bit of that. So I've... That's the ballpark where I've gone. So you can see that there's a bit of the pentatonic. There's that idea, but I've quoted directly from the E major shape, which lives there. And that isn't necessarily something that you want to do as blatantly as I have done here. As I say, I'm looking to demonstrate rather than say, here's a cool solo, learn this. So that's the idea of using the caged chord shape in that particular context. Maybe it's time to move on to lick 5. In this final lick, I've used the A major shape, which you'll recognise. I mean, of course, one of the other things about the whole caged chord principles is that we're talking about it's a little bit like the principle of using different inversions or different versions of each chord, but rather than using it to make a chord part, we're using it to make a solo or a lead part or a melody. Now, that A being there and the E chord, using the A shape, so that's a less comfortable but probably easier to understand, more literal version that happens there. Now, I've gone straight in with... I've added a couple of pentatonic notes which are in the neighbouring vicinity of there, and they coincide. I kind of went as far as I felt I could go with that without becoming too repetitive, so on complete whim I've superimposed some sort of partial chords I mean, really, I wasn't thinking that clearly about what I was trying to demonstrate there. I was just allowing myself to finish it off with a nice lick. But we have... These things are strewn about the blues pretty, liberally. So I just had a little bit of fun with that at the end. And you could tie that into the cage shapes, but I think maybe no need there. But that is our fifth and final cage shape. Now, we'll have another listen to those shapes strung together in the kind of demo solo, and I hope you find some useful ideas in there, and see you next time.